everybody. Welcome to inPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Happy week. Happy week. Wow. Over the last, holy moly, I'd say last month, we have had some really crazy astrology. We just came out of this time frame where Mercury was squaring Neptune, and that is just a whole crap show all to its own, where people were really getting to the bottom of who they are and literally who they are as people, what they're bringing into the world. I mean, there was a lot of crispy, nasty flying all over the place. Wheels were flying off the cart in personal relationships as well as relationships that involved business dealings. I mean, it was just, wow, it was crazy rough, right? That was about the last week of May. And there was a lot going on in that time frame that was really crazy this last week of May. So when we look at that and we look where people were at and we look at what's going on right now, one of the things that we have the opportunity to take a look at here is, who have we chosen to become? And this is really the topic for today's podcast, because I've been noticing this with a lot of people. There's a profound misunderstanding, in my opinion, of being cautious and weighing one's options and being discerning and just basically, breaking open on somebody's head and freaking out because we're paranoid and we think people are doing something that they're not doing. And if you look at our current media culture, this discernment versus paranoia, absolute and total epidemic, has been horrible. And now we've got people out there who are looking at actual journalists' work that is posted on a news broadcast or online. And we're talking real, reputable journalists, who are part of journalist organizations. They're not like, Jim Bob sitting in his mom's basement deciding to put a blog out about how the aliens are coming to eat our brains. I mean, we're talking real journalists who have a vetted, credible background. These people are being thrown under the bus as being part of a fake news cycle. So when we think about, what is illusion, what is fake, what is real, what is discernment, what is paranoia, man, we live in such a time frame right now that if we want to develop a world that is all about us, our opinions, I mean, literally everything so insular that we never have to worry about one wide thing being outside of our opinion, we can do that now. And personally, I think that's scary as heck. Because part of what we're doing right now is going through this experience that these angels talking about. The old world burns away. The new realm is upon us. We've gone through this time frame called the Great Purge. And literally, we basically have to put it very, very plainly and obviously, gang, we've got all kinds of nuances here spiritually that the angelic kingdom talks to me about all the time. Yet what we're looking at here are two very distinct tribes of consciousness. And one of the tribes of consciousness really wants to just move to a place of healing and reparative action. And it doesn't mean forgive and forget. It just means, okay, so you did this in the past. I did this in the past. Let's move forward and create something better. Okay, that's one tribe. We've also got this tribe of, this is the world in the way in which I have crafted it, and you're either part of my bubble buster or you're not. And I'm watching this okay, let me back up. So I've got the angel who walks with the world, who says that which is brought upon you, this time frame of truly deciding the self. Think about that a minute. This that is brought upon you, which means we kind of brought it on ourselves, actually. This time frame of deciding the self. Deciding the self. Not we're, I'm going to figure out who I really am. We're deciding who we want to be. Because we can be anybody. I mean, right now I could go completely crazy. I could go do something terrible to a school. I could lose my ever-loving mind. There's a million things that I could do. that would not be consistent with who I am and would not be appropriate to who I am, but I could decide to do those things anyway. So this angel is saying, who walks with the world, we're all in this time frame of deciding. Basically, that's an action call. It's a call to action. We're deciding what kind of call to action we want to take, okay? So when I look out there and I see these really phenomenal journalists, and some of them are journalists that are more conservative, and I'm not going to throw any names out there. It's not important. Yet, when I see these people being dragged through the mud as fake news sources because certain people don't agree with them, I have to laugh because we are deciding who we're going to be right now. Are we really going to be the culture? Because, this whole thing is a big mainframe. It's all a learning experience. We're all in the great big matrix down here. And so is this just going to be this massive time frame of us flooding the ethers with who we think we are and demanding that everybody be that person? Or is this going to be the time frame where we decide that we have enough bandwidth for people who may not have our particular window of our view, our lens? Because I'll tell you, gang, it's going to get really real between now and 2020. Not only are the presidential elections going to get just ridiculous. I mean, I can barely even watch this stuff anymore. And I'm a massive believer in running for office. I really am. I'm a huge, get involved with your community and, have a say in your local government. I'm all about that. Yet to watch what we've done collectively in our matrix to create this illusion of, basically I said there's two tribes. There's the folks who you either have to be in their bubble, or there's folks who are like, can we just pop the bubble and just try to move past this, please? And again, I use the word tribe because we're still not out of the woods yet on how these two ideologies of people are going to get along. We are still treating these ideologies as a tribal situation. In other words, if I'm an in the bubble person, let's just say for 5 seconds, I'm an in the bubble person, and you have to be part of my bubble. Otherwise, I'm not going to get along with you about something. And you have to believe what I believe, and you have to say all the people are fake that I say are fake. And if you don't, then I'm not inviting you to my birthday party, and I'm taking my stuffed unicorn back home when I call my mom because I'm over at your sleepover and I don't want to be there anymore. I mean, we literally have massive chunks, millions and millions, billions and billions and billions. We have millions of adults all across America who are acting emotionally from a 5-year-old neglected self-center. Think about this. We are all being gifted right now with this opportunity to heal the inner child within all of us. Yet we haven't quite gotten there yet. So we're still in these two tribes of, the can we come together tribe, or the, you have to be in my bubble, otherwise you're fake tribe. So let's just say I'm one of the people that gets really offended if everybody doesn't believe exactly what I believe, okay? And you'll notice that tribe of people are part of the same bubble, whether they subscribe to a left-leaning or right-leaning political ideology. They're still in that same tribal bubble of you have to believe exactly what I believe, otherwise you're out. I can't talk to you anymore. We have to get really tribalistic and junior high about this. And this angel who walks with the world, I was asking about this the other day. That's why we're talking about this today. I was sitting out on my back deck, and I've got this beautiful, massive view of the Gallatin range of mountains in the Gallatin Valley here outside of Bozeman and Gallatin Gateway. And that's where we've been living for the last year. And we're about ready to make a change again in our living arrangements because I've got all kinds of things going on with Road Angel and everything else. However, I'm asking this angel, what is the point of this time frame? Because we just seem to be really spinning our wheels, and it seems like there are people who are getting it on a smaller level. Yet on the big picture, the big dinosaur of the old world that's falling away is missing this stack of memos like somebody's squatting underneath of a Frisbee game. I mean, literally, they're just flying right over the top of their head. And that's when this angel came back and said, no, you're trying to figure out who you're going to decide you're going to be. And I'm going to paraphrase because, these angels sound a lot like Yoda. So I say, okay, so we're deciding who we're going to be. Well, it kind of seems like our decision process is kind of hung up right now. And what this angel cracked open the ethers and showed me was our decision-making process is hung up because we just aren't really sure who we're going to be as a species yet. Our hearts are empathic. We are an empathic species that has evolved from beings that are interconnected on this planet. I mean, the earth is alive. The water is alive. The ocean is alive. The wind is alive. The plants are alive. The animals are alive. The clouds are alive. The trees are alive. The rocks are alive. We are alive. We have evolved from a biosphere of connectivity, human beings. Okay. And I know, yes, we have off-world genome in us. Most of us do. I'd say 99% of us do at this point. Yet we still, that genome is just sort of, it's like, well, how do I put this? The off-world genome is more like just a little bit of cinnamon that's thrown into the whole chocolate cake mix, okay? So the mix is already there. We're just a little bit cinnamon flavored right now. Most of us are. Yet this angel was showing me that we are deciding right now whether we want to rely on, and I'm going to paraphrase this at the most bottom line level here, whether we actually want to trust our own gut with one another and go back to just trusting, or we want to become these insular, paranoid, frenetic weirdos that basically blow the whole world up. That is literally what we are deciding right now. And we see this all play out in some really weirdo ways in our media. And so when I was asking this angel, what is the point of all this? I mean, I can feel people's hearts, gang. I can feel the hearts of the whole world. And I will tell you that human beings want to get along. Human beings want to start talking to their family members again that they love, that they had falling outs with over political issues. I mean, gang, the people who aren't talking to family anymore, and I know there's a lot of people out there. I have a lot of clients, a lot of friends who all of this political stuff blew out, and it was just so painful for people to hear certain things that their family members believed that they just couldn't even be around them anymore. Yet what I'll tell you about that is with every single one of these clients, there were really underlying issues there anyway with how these people were going to be, okay? So there were underlying issues there no matter what with these folks. And I think that's important to recognize because when we're talking about not talking to family members and we blame it on politics, well, clearly you don't just stop talking to somebody because they hold a different opinion than you do. That's really silly. Grown-ups don't do that. Usually there's a lot of other wounds there that this one big thing on top of it, I've had people on both sides of the aisle not talk to each other for opposite reasons. I have people who have Trump supporters in their family, and these Trump supporters, maybe for the first time in their lives, because they now feel like they can come forward with this information, they feel safe enough to, are coming forward to say, well, no, I don't think brown-skinned people have a right to be in our country. And I think that, well, sure, if they can get in legally and, whatever, but I think we should even screen who we decide comes in, and I think we need to protect our white populations and our American way of life is dying. Well, these people apparently finally feel safe enough to say these things. And there are family members that grievously wounds when they hear that kind of stuff and they can't take it. And it's too hard for them to actually look at that family member and say, wow, this person I've loved, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my uncle, my aunt, whoever it is, this person I loved has always thought this, yet now it is sitting in front of me and it's been given a mouth and lips just like Mick Jagger, like a big Rolling Stones t-shirt, and it's flapping out hurtful stuff or stuff that I think is hurtful. So I'm going to take this another step forward. Well, maybe I've always had problems with my mother, my brother, my, whatever it is, my mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle. Maybe I've always had problems with them. Our ideologies have been in completely different places, but now I know why, because in my mind, says this particular person with this particular way of looking at things, that person's a bigot. And I never wanted to look it in the mirror, but now I have to look at them in the mirror. So now I can't talk to them anymore because that means I'm the friend of a bigot, or I am a bigot supporter, or I am a bigot lover, or what does that say about me? Because my tribal group is going to freak out and say, oh my God, I can't believe you're hanging out with that Archie Bunker person. Then where does that put us? Not to mention it grievously wounds the heart of someone who hears, grievously wounds them, that the brown people need to be left out and that there's kids dying at the border and it's all fake news and none of it's real. And then we begin to get very uncomfortable, let's say, if we're somebody who is believing that we should have more open border policies or whatever. If we're not that Trump supporter, and I'm making very large brushstrokes here, gang, and I'm making very big observations over the last 2 years with clientele that I've talked with and kind of amalgamating a lot of different situations here. Yet the energy of observation here is amassing and it's huge. Then we've got we'll just call them the people that perhaps would consider themselves a Trump supporter. And by the way, I know lots of conservative folks who do not support Mr. Trump, yet for the sake of the easy to pin on the wall ideology here, we're just going to say Trump supporter, okay? So then we've got the Trump supporter who is devastated to actually find out that their mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, child, whatever, is an illegal alien sympathizer, that they believe that gay marriage is okay. What the heck is wrong with them that they are not a proud American? Didn't they know that great-grandpa died and great-great-grandpa died and grandpa died in the war? And don't we know that all these people died trying to protect an ideology that's super sacred to every cell in that person's body? And they are just blown away that this individual over here just is so stupid that they want to pay $1 million worth of taxes and give it all away to non-working people who are sleeping under bridges. I mean, do you know how hard I've worked to pay my bills? Do you have any idea how I've not gone out and squandered my money and I've worked super hard to save it? So why are you getting angry at me that I want to protect the American way of life? And it's really interesting, then they're turning around saying, oh my God, well, my mother, my father, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, my children are a snowflake. They're this bleeding heart, brainwashed, no good groupthink whack job who's getting sucked into every fake news article on TV. Then we go back over to the non-Trump supporter saying, oh my God, my mother, father, brother, sister, child, aunt, uncle, whatever is getting sucked into this cult of illusion and denial. And there we stand. So what do we do about it, humanity? What are we going to do? Because, regardless of what your outcome is, or your outlook, regardless of what your outlook is, it is going to affect your outcome. Because our outlook right now, this angel is saying, who are you deciding you're going to be? Think about that comment a minute. That means we can be anybody that we want to be. We are simply deciding to take on an ideology and to bring that through in the world because it's probably commensurate with our lens of the world, okay? And one of the things that I think is I was listening to that angel for a second. One of the things that I think is so interesting here is that as we go through this process of, discernment versus paranoia, what is paranoia? If I decide that everybody in the world is out to get me and I start second guessing everybody's motives and I might feel a little wiggle in a person emotionally or psychologically or whatever, but I feel like I have to come out swinging heavy to cover my butt because I have to protect myself, by God, and I'm going to second guess what they're doing and I'm going to decide what they know or they don't know, and I'm going to hang this persona on them that allows me to cast them in the play of my own crafting. That's paranoia, okay? I mean, when you're not letting somebody say, well, no, you felt a little wiggle in me, but that was just a wiggle. I was just thinking about this or that, or I was remembering something that made me feel a certain way. It's just a wiggle. And then if I sit there and argue with that person, oh no, that wiggle's huge. Oh no, that's way bigger than I felt. Oh, you're just not being honest with me. And I need to protect myself and my family from your political ideology. And paranoid. Sorry. And it's okay if you want to be paranoid, gang, but just at least please admit you're being paranoid, because it's one of our steps to deciding who we're going to be. So if I am, say, that person who begins second guessing everybody because the entire nation is being gaslighted right now by two political franchises called the RNC and the DNC, we're going to get into that. Then how do we learn to trust our freaking gut? Because remember, gang, especially remember good Americans, if you're American and you're listening to this, you got to remember, you've been trained as a good consumer, consume, to eat things, to mindlessly chow through information, resources, and stuff like a Pac-Man. The whole time. You're a good American consumer, by God. Good for you. So if you're American and you're listening to this, you bet your butt that you have been second guessing your gut for as long as you can remember, because you've been sold products that have told you who you are. You have been sold a way of life that is supposed to define who you are. And what defines you is your house and your car and how wonderful your spouse is, or maybe how many kids you have. We have been sold a bill of sociopathic crap in America that has, and we've eaten it up because we're good consumers, waka, 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 waka. And we thought we needed to, and it was part of our soul growth, okay? So I'm not blaming anybody here. I am just calling out the obvious because we're talking about spiritual physics that exist in the Matrix, okay? And one really big piece of spiritual physics that exists in the Matrix is our need in America to escape. And we can escape because let's take a look at our freedom over here to escape and what this has to do with discernment versus paranoia, okay? For God's sakes, we are on the North American continent. Our northern neighbor is Canada. And it's not like Canada is going to come invade us. God, I feel bad for Canada. They're like, please stop moving here. Please. We love you guys, but you're crazy. And then we've got Mexico to our southern border. And I know plenty of folks from Mexico, and the way that our media covers the folks who are trying to get across the border without going through legal channels right now is kind of appalling. All of Mexico is not a border town. That may surprise you to hear that, because that's what we cover in America. So we're so busy up here in our own freaking bubble. We've got the Pacific on one side. We've got the Atlantic on the other side. We've got Mexico to our south. They're not going to invade us, and I mean, even though they like to call this the epic invasion over the border. Oh my God. You know what? I'm getting sick of hearing about that. I'll tell you why. Because when the potato famine happened in Ireland, many of those people climbed on boats and came to America. And they called it the Irish invasion in the early 1900s and late 1800s. I mean, this was huge. And if you look at, Gangs of New York, that movie, it talks all about this. And I don't know what it is about a presiding group of people that have to decide that if a bunch of people are coming in from somewhere else, seeking asylum or food for their children, or somebody not killing them or raping them, that's an invasion. They called it the Irish invasion when the potato famine was happening, okay? And there were signs up in New York City that said no Irish, as far as working. And there was this horrible saying that went around in that time frame that was, an Irish person will do for a nickel what an N-word won't do for a dime. I can't even say it, even though it's an historically accurate quote. So they didn't want the Irish around. They considered them the scourge of the earth. And those people are Caucasian, okay? So now we've got a southern border issue. And we've got all these people hitting the border. And yes, we do have parts of our nation that are not very strengthened, and good sensible border security is good, because we are having human trafficking and drugs and all kinds of stuff run over the border. We're not the only country that has that happen, gang. Hello, welcome to being on earth with people who are unscrupulous, okay? So yeah, this is a problem. And we've got states like California, and I used to live in California for about 12 years, 11 years or so in Los Angeles. And the southern part of California has a completely different spiritual, sociological, and really economic need than the northern part does. What California, northern and southern, do share with one another is when you get off the coasts, the interior of California is all farms. It's all agriculture. So, although California has threatened to break off to a Northern California and a Southern California, just like a North and South Dakota, or a Northern South Carolina, they're not going to, because they are such a massive belt of, basically commerce, through agriculture. So I suppose they could be East and West California. That might be something, but it's not going to happen. So the point I'm making to you is that when we want to look at this crisis on our southern border, why don't we look at the crisis on the damn earth for a minute? There are people who are starving all over the place and trying to get to better places everywhere on this earth. Look what was going on in Syria. So the fact that, again, this goes back to our insular, illusionary, consumerist nature in the United States. Right? So here we sit in the United States. We've got our one border, which is the Atlantic Ocean. We've got our other border, which is the Pacific Ocean. We've got our neighbor Canada and our neighbor Mexico. And the only thing we can think of to do right now to create some semblance of nationalism or tribalism is to point at the people on the southern border and say, oh, they're overrunning our country. Oh my gosh. Now, I will tell you, I know people who live in Mexico and who live in Arizona. I know people who live in Mexico, and I know people who live in California and all those border states. And yes, Texas, there are some serious issues that they're having with drugs and craziness down there. So let's go address those issues. But for America to turn this into an invasion is ridiculous. What we're seeing is we are seeing world resources drying up. So people are migrating to the areas where the resources are booming. Now that's one pin in that pile. The second pin in this pile, because we're talking about paranoia versus discernment here, okay? So people are paranoid about, oh my God, those southern borders, we're going to die. I don't think a mom with 3 kids coming over with, a comb in her pocket is probably going to kill me. I do understand that there's a lot of repeat offenders and some nasty human beings that are coming over that border, and that's what our Border Patrol is busy trying to manage. However, to call that an invasion is ridiculous. Yet this is what we do with our tribalist, insular, consumerist selves, is we have to create an enemy. And it's really hard to have one over here because it's not going to be Canada. The United States was smart enough. We do have a National Hockey League here. Yet we were smart enough to not even try to rise up and best Canada in hockey. We just let it be. And hey, all you hockey fans, rock on. I actually really enjoy hockey, so I'm not saying that. But Canada, we don't really, what are we going to do? Hate them for smiling too much? Loathe them because their syrup is better? Beat them with a stick because they allow people health care? Yeah. No, it's easier to look at our southern border where impoverished people are trying to come in illegally than to lock them under bridges and to say we're being invaded. That is an illusion. It is true that our borders are being flooded. It is true that those border states have issues that northern states and middle America states are not going to understand. It is true that California fights all the time about their tax dollars being used to assist illegal folks or folks who crossed illegally with health care. And there's people who are happy about it in California and people who are really unhappy about it. Yet are we being invaded? No, we're not. Okay? Is there a humanitarian crisis in parts of the world? Yes. That is discernment. Paranoia is we are being invaded. Trust me. A lot of these people, if we could just get them here, and plug them into jobs and whatever, I'm sure would love to go to different parts of our country that many people who have lived here their whole lives have migrated out of because they just don't want to deal with it anymore. I mean, we have a lot of space in this nation. And again, the illusion is that we're being invaded. The discernment is those border states need some help because they don't have the resources to deal with the yield of people that are seeking asylum and seeking help. And the other flip side of the coin is there are some nasty people coming over doing nasty things. So it's this whole big ball of how do we handle this? Who do we decide we're going to be? Okay. You see where this is all laying in here, gang? Okay. So, we have these other opportunities to look at paranoia versus discernment. We've got the RNC and the DNC, and I'm going to wade into those waters here. It's kind of a charged podcast today, but hey, that's okay. We can do ghosts in the next one. How's that? The thing is, the RNC and the DNC are commercialized endeavors that control who ascends to the presidency. And they control who ascends to the presidency by making sure that we have gerrymandering, by making sure that people are having their resources moved, by making sure that, especially the DNC is just really, I can't even believe the stuff they pull. It's crazy. Where they disqualify certain people, but other people can be allowed to pass through. I'm not necessarily saying that, I follow every single thing that the RNC does, yet their rules for nominating are a lot more clear than the DNC's. The DNC's are full of little loopholes to make sure that the DNC can still control the nominee. And the RNC controls the nominee in a totally different way with a totally different narrative because the folks that tend to back up the RNC tend to just kind of be in their own way unless they're really on the fringe of the crazy, crazy right and they're burying beans and guns and they're waiting for the zombie apocalypse. We've got those people on the left too, trust me. Whoa. However, unless they're way out there, the RNC manages its people through media messages of patriotism and they get people in line in their own way. The DNC flat up just changes the rules on people when they don't like the way things are going. And maybe the RNC does too. I'm not as involved with the RNC, so I don't know. Yet, let me give you an example. The DNC and the RNC, their whole job is to run money and make sure that they are the brokers for large business bids in government. They are there to single-handedly make sure that a regular everyday Joe doesn't ascend, or Jane, or non-binary person, Lynn, ascends to the presidency. They are there to make sure that someone who is not going to play the game isn't going to get there. That's their job. And their job is also to make a lot of money and to broker business deals through managing the people who go into those positions, just like middle management. I want you to think of the DNC and the RNC as middle management for much larger, an old dying dinosaur, okay? So the DNC just pulled a fast one, and I think this is fascinating. And the governor of Montana, his name is Steve Bullock, and he's running for president. And Steve Bullock got into the race pretty darn late. And a bunch of Montanans were just like, oh, come on, what are you doing? That's stupid. What are you doing? Yet the reason he got into it late is he was actually sitting in the Montana congressional session and getting the state's business done first, completely, wholeheartedly. And then he went ahead and left to go and do his thing in the presidential nomination. So, if you don't know that story, you'd look at Steve Bullock and say, here's another weirdo from Montana. Governors don't win the presidential bid. Why is he getting involved in this? So here comes Steve Bullock, and he gets out there, and, the DNC says you have to have 65,000 different donations coming in order to make you eligible for the debate stage. And we saw Marianne Williamson actually get her 65,000. So Marianne Williamson is going to the debates, which I think is cool. And I did misspeak in one of my former podcasts saying that she actually authored Course in Miracles. That was just a slip of the tongue. She did not author the Course in Miracles. She taught on the premises of the Course in Miracles. However, she has been a New York Times bestselling author on other books. So I apologize for misspeaking. That was just a slip of the tongue. However, she got in to the presidential nomination, or excuse me, the bids for the debates. She's in. So here comes Steve Bullock, and there's a couple of ways, according to the DNC, that you can actually get up there on the debate stage. You can get at least 1% in a couple of polls that the DNC says, well, we'll accept the poll results from A, B, and C here. So you can get 1%, or you can get this 65,000 individual contributions. They can be $1, but they have to come in from individual people, okay? So Steve Bullock, even though he started his nod for the presidency really super late, and I have to tell you, half of Montana is rolling their eyes going, oh, come on, man, what are you doing? But anyway, the reason he's running is because he is the governor of a red state. He's a Democrat, but he's a major across the aisle guy, and he knows how to work with, conservatism and progressiveness and traditional Democratic stuff and whatever. So he actually poses a pretty damn big problem for the DNC, because if he actually makes the debate stage, he is a winning Democratic governor time and time again in a red state. So that puts a kink in their narrative that a good old, lock, stock, and barrel Democrat can't win in a red state, because they're leaning heavily towards the very far progressive side of this. So the DNC, now this has to do with discernment versus paranoia. So just hang in there with me on this. This is not a political thing. Well, it is, but it's an example. So, here's Steve Bullock. Well, all of a sudden the DNC realized, oh my God, the one of the 3 polls, he had those 3 polls. He came in at 1% on 3 of these polls that the DNC said that they would accept. So that automatically meant that this governor from a red state who's a Democrat is going to appear on the stage in the national debates. And Steve Bullock is actually crazy well-spoken, and he's very charismatic. Well, that's going to cause a problem, because that's not their lock, stock, and barrel person that they want in there. Steve Bullock hasn't played ball with the DNC, and he's he's done a bit with them, but not in the great big way, not the national way. So they decided that one of his polls didn't count, just recently. That's a true story. So everybody who thinks, if you're a lefty out there and you think that the DNC is voting, no, they're just as political as everybody else. They looked at Steve Bullock and they said, this guy's going to cause a problem. You're going to put a wrinkle in our plan here. So they decided one of his polls doesn't count, and now we're looming down to the deadline of 65,000 people to actually get on the debate stage. And basically, if you don't get on the national debate stage, you have no chance at all of being president. So the reason I bring this up, and I'm sure there's dirty pool that the RNC plays all the time, but it's very important to realize that is discernment, to simply look at the DNC and the RNC and say, oh my God, these 2 organizations are here to solely serve themselves and to be gatekeepers, to control the money and to control who is in power. And there have been people who have thrown away their whole entire, if you want to call it a political career, and they're not supposed to be careers. It's supposed to be a job we all do. If I'm the garbage person, I go to Congress for a while. If I'm the teacher, I go to Congress for a while. If I'm the person if I'm the auto mechanic, I go to Congress for a while. It's kind of like, it was supposed to be like jury duty, being in Congress. Did you know that? It's a civil job you get called up for, and now it's been turned into a power brokerage. So if I was paranoid, this is a discerning way to look at this. If I was paranoid, I'd look at this and say, oh my God, the Illuminati have taken over. It's the cabal, the deep state, the dark state. They're going to run us into the ground. It is discernment to look and say, well, our consumerist nature only cares for itself in America. It is paranoid to think that they're going to take all our guns, take all our bullets, run us underground, force us to get unmarried, keep women as incubators. That's a little paranoid. Okay, yet is discerning to notice that our political system is simply a money brokering thing. And this is why Paul Ryan retired. Okay. And I know people are like, no, he retired because he's going to run for president. He retired. Paul Ryan was a constitutionalist. He was not my favorite guy. Okay. Politically speaking, I don't know him as a human being. We might get along just wonderfully in a coffee shop, for crying out loud. But just speaking in terms of political ideology, we were as far apart as you could possibly get. Yet I looked at that guy and realized, oh my God, Speaker Ryan is freaked out. He is bailing on this because Washington, D.C. is now unabashedly claiming to be bought and paid for. And now we're unabashedly claiming to be bought and paid for by the Russians, and nobody's doing anything about it. So this is where this angel comes in. Who do you decide that you're going to be? Okay, so we're bought and paid for by Russia. Well, what does that mean? How far does that go? And one could easily go down the paranormal hole of paranoia there. And when I say bought and paid for by Russia, obviously the whole country is not. That's just kind of a funny there. Yet we do have a lot of Russian oligarchs doing business with us right now at a federal level. And we erased all those sanctions against Russia so we could do business with them. And so, people have thrown away their political careers trying to defend the RNC or the DNC. And what we end up with there is we end up with people not governing by the people for the people. They are governing by the money for the money. And that is a discerning look at where we're at in government. Yet who do we decide we're going to be amidst that? I mean, do we just turn into these crazy people that burn everything down and anarchy, and then we have another authoritarian that rises in and that goes into totalitarianism? That's clearly not the answer. Do we all get in our bubbles? And it's okay that we have people that we draw boundaries with in our life. Maybe politics just kind of put that one match on the giant tinder pile 6 stories tall that was waiting to catch that match and go up in flames. Maybe that tinder pile has been building with you and another family member for 25 years, and this was just the match that lit it. No judgment here from me whatsoever. The point of this podcast today is to ask you, who are you going to decide you're going to be and why? Because from 2019 to 2020, we are going to have such a rodeo. And I'll tell you, one of the governing factors in that rodeo is going to be the Democratic ticket. It's going to be the DNC. And you might be a conservative leaning person listening to this podcast. And you're probably sitting back eating popcorn going, my God, the Democrats have gone crazy. This is nuts. I'm going to go get a beer and go out and hang out for a while, go bowling. I mean, it's true. We've got a little bit of a flooded field on the left side. Yet what's going to be important is who we choose to be through all of this. Because who we decide that we're going to be is going to set us up for the next 5 years. Not just 4 with the next president, but the next 5. And I will tell you, getting into paranoia isn't going to help anybody. So as I was saying here at the end of May, we had these really big aspects of, basically, we've got that Neptune squaring Mercury, which wanted us to look inside of ourselves and see who we were. And it was challenging our tribal nature of, are we the connect tribe or are we the get out of my bubble or I'm going to poke you in the eye tribe? And then how do we get, if we are the connect tribe, how do we start getting away from the tribal outlook of that to be able to say, wow, if I really am the connect tribe, I need to include people who, might not be my cup of tea yet, aren't really polarized either. And let's think about it instead of 2 tribes, because that's kind of energetically where everybody's separated themselves or is separating right now. I'm going to pose an option C. We're going to make a third option here. And that third option is, instead of having to go tribal in option A or B, we are going to hold a wide open space for people to be part of the human family in option C. Okay? And if somebody starts talking about racism or something that's crazy, as long as they are not actively taking action on that, it breaks my heart that people have that opinion of other people. Yet at the same time, I'm probably not going to get a racist to be unracist in one conversation. So if my goal is to really show that individual that racism is oftentimes it's cultural, it's taught. Sometimes it's an affect of different onsets of mental illness, okay? If I'm going to hold a space that we are all people and we all have something to work on within ourselves regarding someone else, some other culture. I mean, come on, if you reach deep, there's going to be somebody in there that makes you go, oh, I kind of resist that culture, or I resist that person, or I resist that. Not maybe it's not skin color, maybe it's a cultural issue. I mean, it's difficult when we don't understand the full cultural ramifications of another place to cast judgment on it and say, okay, that's pretty terrible. And so, if we're going to make an option C, the option C doesn't have to be tolerant of everything. And tolerant, such a gross, condescending word anyway. It doesn't have to be condoning of everything. Yet option C, if we're going to survive discernment and paranoia, option C is stewardship. Stewardship for one another, stewardship for the well-being of my neighbor. It's interesting. My wife and I live in Gallatin Gateway in Montana. And it's a teensy-weensy little town that is literally, it has a bar, a steakhouse, a pizza parlor, and a post office. That's what it's got. And it's about 13 miles from downtown Bozeman. And in Gallatin Gateway, we're in the county. Bozeman is like the bluest city in Montana. And Trump won Montana by 20 points. It's traditionally a very red state. And even these old world definitions of blue and red and Republican and Democrat, they are dying on the vine right now. Yet I'm using these today in the podcast to demonstrate for you the tribal polarities in which we automatically get into. Okay. So here's me and Rebecca. We live in the county in Gallatin. Bozeman is a blue city. We live in the county, which is pretty red out here. All right. And here's two lesbians and their daughter and their two little foo-foo dogs and three foo-foo dogs, two Pomeranians and a mini American Eskimo. And we're living out here with, very traditional old world conservative people, not the neoconservatives that are going crazy and marching with the swastikas and all that. Just, your daddy's John Wayne Republican, fiscal conservatives. And if I were to adhere to the ideology of tribalism, I'm either in my bubble or I'm including everyone, I wouldn't be able to live where I live. Because I can't necessarily include all my neighbors out there who sometimes watch us walking our dog and they wave and they're very polite and they're very kind. Yet I'm going to go to the polls and my vote's going to cancel their vote out in 10 seconds. And you know something? They don't care and I don't care because we are the stewards of one another. Because we happen to live right up against Yellowstone Park. Well, not right against it, but we live against the Gallatins. And you know what comes down out of the Gallatins? Freaking bears, okay? And moose. And we have bigger things to worry about out here, like staying alive as human beings. Not that, bears are breaking in every 5 seconds. But we as Montanans understand that, hey, you do your thing over there. I'm going to do my thing over here. I'm a good neighbor. You're a good neighbor. I'm kind. You're kind. I understand you are entitled to your view and your lens, and you understand I'm entitled to my view and my lens. I understand you're getting a chuckle when the lesbians walk by with the Pomeranians, and your two hunting dogs are over there looking at these things like, is that my food? What's going on? I understand we come from different places. Yet the discernment here is to understand that it doesn't matter at the end of the day because, gang, I'm going right back to the top of the podcast. We are all connected beings that are connected into the earth. We are connected into the earth. And we are connected with one another. And that traditional, John Wayne's daddy's Republican there, that traditional person has so nothing to do with the way that the corporate RNC is run or why it's being run that way or why Mitch McConnell, God bless his heart. And I say that because that man is about ready to drop dead. Senator McConnell, if Senate Majority Leader McConnell, if for some reason somebody passes you this podcast, man, your pulmonary system is not in a good way. Your heart chakra is not in a good way. You have sucked it up, Buttercup, for too long in that Senate, and things are now toxic. And I fear that you are going to shut your own system down. And if you choose to do that, sir, that's on you. Yet, sir, a vacation, anything, go to the Bahamas. Let somebody rub your feet. Come on, Speaker. This is like Speaker Pelosi even knows how to take care of herself. Come on, Mitch. So, when we can start seeing the humanity in people and recognize that, no, do I agree with everything Mitch McConnell's? Oh, heck no, for crying out loud. That's just goofy. Yet I can see him as a person. That is my discernment. My paranoia would say, I can see Mitch McConnell in this psychic realm is going to have massive health problems, massive blood clots. I don't care if he has health care paid for him. Have you seen the color of his skin? The guy's not oxygenated. The guy is ill, which is one of the reasons he's making the decisions he's making. So, I can see that person and say, my God, can somebody please go to him and say, sir, I'm assuming you have grandkids and a family. Why don't you go spend some time with them? And I think actually Paul Ryan even tried to get him to go there, and I don't think that was very successful. So, we get to be we get to decide who we're going to be. If Mitch McConnell wants to be Anakin Skywalker, absolutely welded into the Darth Vader outfit of the sociopathic consumerist driving agenda of the consumerist waka United States of America energetically, well, he's just gonna. And he's putting himself there right now. And there are other people who are backed by the DNC that have done the same thing, gang. So when we look at our political franchises, they work very closely together. Now, that doesn't mean that we all need to go crazy on the fringe and burn it all down. You may do so if you wish. That's not going to actually help. It might take out a few buildings you didn't like and maybe a few people, which is super unfortunate. Yet that is a karma that you would have to bear, okay? So to come together as the stewards of one another means that we've got to seriously reach down and pull ourselves up by our big girl and big boy and big person panties and get past even the tribalism that would separate us into the two tribes of, well, everybody, let's get along, and I'm in my own bubble. We've even got to transcend that, and we can do it. We can be the stewards of one another by not having to boss one another around. We're going to disagree on things. Heck, we're a two lesbian household, okay? My wife and I obviously are gay. That would get awkward if one of us weren't. And so even she and I, who through this heavy time of categorization, we have very polar opinions on certain things. Sometimes she looks at me, she's from Missouri. So sometimes she looks at me and thinks I'm just this peace, love, and harmony hippie. And I look at her and I'm like, well, that's a little hardcore there, sister. Yet technically we are both part of the left. Guess what? I hold a space for her. She holds a space for me. We need to begin, in my opinion. I got angels here saying, well, all is fair. So they don't like the words we need because we don't need to do anything. It's all our choice. Yet if we can be the stewards of one another and step away from the crazy DNC, RNC marketing, we're going to begin to come out of the paranoia because both of those franchises sell paranoia. That's how they get people elected. That's how they control the money. So our challenge is, how do we remain engaged human beings when all of our media is feeding the paranoia? And some of our media is starting to go back to a central space because the sensationalistic media cycles are losing viewership and people just aren't interested. They don't want to deal with it. So what I think is so interesting about that is you've got these cycles where people are attempting to come forward here and they're attempting to bring truths out. And we have some people all over the place, whether they're part of the right or the left, saying, well, that's fake. That's fake. So how do we learn to trust our gut again, gang? By holding a space for what your internal compass tells you is the correct action for you. And I'll tell you straight up, victimization is out in this new world. If you are somebody listening today and you think it's actually appropriate to victimize another person, whether you are a racist person who is victimizing another person due to race, whether you're a super lefty and you are, bullying and freaking out on people online because they don't hold your same political viewpoints, whether you're whoever you are, that type of victimization and groupthink is going to be problematic in the feminine timeframes vibration in this rebuilding time frame. So we get to decide who we're going to be. I highly encourage everybody to listen to that voice of love within them that drives you past that shame button that was planted within you by old world religions where we created a God in the image of humanity and where we put that shame button in there because we had to be part of the groupthink process. That's part of our consumerist training, America. Waka, 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 waka. Just consume and consume and consume and don't rock the boat. I highly encourage everybody, to take your devices and turn them off and start to make up your own mind about people. And, yes, of course, educate yourself and you can read the newspaper, yet understand that we are literally coming out of a space in the United States of America. And this is what we've got in front of us. It's a challenge. We are coming out of this space where the money has been in control for 75 years. Okay? This just didn't happen with Trump. I mean, oh God, oh, poor Donald. Lord Almighty, I see what's coming down the pike for him, and it's just so awful. This man lives on his identity of being the big business mogul. We're going to find out that he has many siblings. He was just the one that was, because of his learning disabilities, because of his lack of confidence, he was the Trump that Dad basically said, well, I'll give you attention if you run my shell companies that I launder all my money through. And Donald said, sure, I get to be the big man. Look at me, I'm the big man at campus. And we're about ready to see that all shaken out. So that man's personal hell is going to get delivered to him in a way that he's going to blow his mind. Like his 70-something brain isn't even going to be able to handle that kind of a lesson. It's just going to blow the breaker, and that's going to be about it. So we have a lot of people that are going to remain his fans, and that's fine. They're all in one big lesson together, gang. And I had somebody corner me the other day in a co-op of all places. And they said to me, I've been listening to your podcast and I've been, reading your writings. And I just want you to know it's not fine. It's not fine that people are racist. It's not fine that people support Donald Trump. None of this is fine. And the fact that you're saying it's fine, it's a sense of erasure. You're living in another realm. You're this, you're that. And I let this person go on. And I came back and they kind of, I just waited for it because it always comes around. And they said, so what do your angels have to say? Your angels, your morally correct angels, because this individual who was yelling at me also does not believe in God, is agnostic. They don't really believe in a God, maybe an energy somewhere. So they said, so what do your morally superior angels think of this? And I laughed. And I said, angels have zero opinion on our morality. That is our exercise in lessonry and perception. They are here to support us fully in whatever it is we decide to undertake. And if we undertake dark, creepy crap that they can't actually wade in the waters of, because energetically it does not mesh with them. If we get dark enough and nasty enough, we can literally keep our angels to a degree somewhat at arm's length. They are hardwired to us. So they get a little bit of a sucker punch and get some suffering going. If we're going to lay in a vat of acid, and that's what darkness feels like to them, just like light feels like acid to darkness, they're hardwired to us and they experience that as well. And they can try to tell us, it kind of evaporates by the time it gets up the pipeline to the angelic resonance. But they experience the discomfort, they experience the trauma. They don't take it on like we do. They have a completely different relationship with what they're feeling through us. Because it's not their lesson to take it on. It helps them understand us. Yet the idea that angels are trying to teach us a moral lesson is ridiculous. Because the angelic realm is more like a special forces. It's more like a black ops or a white ops in this case. And really, angels have a lot more in common with folks on the spectrum than they do people who are not on the spectrum. Angels cut right through the BS. They see things for what they are. They don't participate with stuff that overloads them. They've got their jobs. They completely don't get overly emotional about certain things. Yet, if they get tipped in a direction that requires some kind of action or some kind of weighted consequence, they're okay to deliver it. Just like a white ops team. They come right in there and boom. I always had to laugh as a pastor in my pastoring days back in the day. And I occasionally pastor in outside the box churches here and there once in a while now because I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about what the Bible actually said as opposed to what we've taught that it's said. I think that's personally fascinating on a historical standpoint. But anyway, you look at angels in the Bible, and they are not these fluffy, puffy baby beings. They are the law keepers. Listen to the Lord your God, or the Lord your God shall smite you. Follow me. Do not argue with me. Do not talk out against me, for I am sent by the Lord your God. Your insolence will basically not be tolerated. So, our angels are not sitting here saying that we need to have a moral lesson. So by this person yelling at me saying, well, it's not okay. It's not okay. As a human being, does Danielle Egnew think racism is okay? Absolutely not. As a human being, does Danielle Egnew think child pornography and child trafficking is okay? Hell no. Oh my God. Hell no. Yet, when I look at the massive overlay of lessons and learning curves, and I'm not saying any one person deserves to be child trafficked. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, gang, that there's a lot here that is way out of our human pay grade. Okay? So if we're going to start standing on our moral high ground all over the place, we're going to fall into tribalism. So how about stewardship? I love my neighbors. I've got some, like I said, daddy's gun-toting Republican John Wayne folks out here. I love these folks. They're so kind. My daughter was walking home and it started pouring rain and one of her neighbors picked her up in the pickup truck and drove her home. And, because that person was being a steward of their neighbors, not, I can't pick up that little girl with the two lesbian moms and their foo-foo dogs living at the end of the archway road. They just said, dang, that little girl's getting rained on, And obviously, we know the neighbor very well, so it wasn't creepy. Yet, I'm just saying to you, if we can come to a place of stewardship, it will be the discerning thing to do rather than the tribally paranoid thing to do. So I'm just going to leave you with that to think about, okay? And this was a big, heavy podcast today. Discernment versus paranoia. What's really going on under the scenes? If we can just see things for what they are, rather than getting mad at the DNC or mad at the RNC or mad at the government, they're not going to change, gang. Those organizations are not going to change. The DNC will change faster because the left chases approval way more than the right does. But they're not going to change at their core. It's what they're there for, is to build themselves. When I ran for mayor in Billings, Montana, okay, that is a nonpartisan race. Yet, sort of under the table, there were people getting helped by the Republican Party, and there were certain people, the Democratic Party couldn't step right up and help folks, yet they gave a clinic on how to canvass. And actually, the clinic was open to a conservative candidate also. Anybody could go. And it was really interesting because, of course, they were coming from the Democratic side of things. And they were kind of talking about, really, I was learning how to canvass politically because I've never run as a candidate. This was back in 2017. And I really felt compelled to run for the mayorship of my city. And so what I noticed is all of a sudden, I'm learning to try to political canvass. This whole thing was, well, if you happen to be, we can't tell you to do this as a Democrat, but, basically it was about list building for the party. And it was about how to build the list for the party. It wasn't about, hey, let me teach you some skills about how to knock on the door and say, hi, I'm running for mayor. And then I found out that even though, again, they couldn't officially help anybody, but that was kind of the gist of this meeting. And I found out from some folks who were my conservative friends who were running for mayor that they kind of got the same speech. So really, it wasn't let me help you. It was, you're really lucky that you can help us. That is the corporate mentality of both of these franchises. And it doesn't mean we have to be mad at them. It just simply means to see them for what they are, to appreciate the good work they are doing on either side of the aisle there, and to not expect them to be something that they're not. Because the stewardship is on us, gang. It's on us. I've been saying this since 2016. I've been saying this since this Hillary Clinton video went viral back then. It is going to be on us to fix our nation. And yes, we can try to send good people to the government, and I'm not saying that's hopeless. I am simply saying that our energetic our energetic ability to connect with one another. That's what's going to change everything. That's what affects the quantum field. That's what brings world peace. So we can start not with tribalism, we can start with stewardship. All right, gang, I got to go. I got my engineer flagging me down going, "You're always over time. You suck." Which is kind of true, but it's a podcast. If I'm on broadcast, they cut me off. I get the hook. We're done. Gang, I want to tell everybody, if you haven't gone to like the Road Angel page, please go to Facebook and Instagram and like the Road Angel with Danielle Egnew. We have such a great crew. We have such a great group working for great consciousness through television here, that if you haven't seen that yet, go like the page, go watch the trailer, because I sign up for our mailing list, gang, because I want to make sure to reach all of you with where we're going next and what we're doing with this show. Actually, coming up in June, we're going to have a shoot in Red Lodge, Montana. I got called up there to do some angelic work, so that's really exciting. We were in Butte. That was exciting. So again, we're putting these episodes together right now. I'm really, really excited to keep all of you in the loop with what's going on, because it's just fun. I do this job for you, gang. That's why I do this job. I mean, it's to help people. So like our Road Angel with Danielle Egnew page on Facebook, come be our friend on Instagram and get to know the cast. Well, I'm the cast, but get to know the crew. There's producer Mary. There is production manager Melissa. And let's just keep the good vibes going, gang. Share that to everybody, because there is more we can do in media if we focus on the positive, uplifting vibration of the quantum field rather than the sensationalized negative, which is exactly why we're doing Road Angel. So thanks, everybody. Go be a good steward of your neighbor, and we will see you next week.